Salutations Rangers, General Rally 101 back again with some more lore. And are you as hyped as I am? Look at this! Brand new Titus. Oh, it's so good. But aside from the fact that my list of models that I need to buy keeps on growing again and again, so much so exponentially that I may be facing debt soon, these beautiful models are but the very tip of the spear, for the lore implications of what's happening for Ultramar are massive. But what exactly does that mean? What is Titus up to? What does Guilliman want with the 500 worlds? Why are there Necrons here? And is this the origin of the Destroyer virus? So very much many questions and much more. But in today's Warhammer 40k lore video, ladies and gents, we will be answering all those questions. So ladies and gentlemen, strap in, buckle up, and let's get crack-a-lackin' on with today's video as we take a look at Captain Titus and the fate of Ultramar. So ladies and gentlemen, first thing first, before we can get into today's video, we need to first answer what is the State of Ultramar. And to understand the State of Ultramar, we need to understand the history of Ultramar. So quick TLDR time. In the aftermath of the Horus Heresy, Ultramar, like much of the Imperium, was in absolute tatters and shambles. And the Primarchs were not helping the issue, as there were two main viewpoints. One personified by Dawn, which was the fact that they wanted to hunt down the traitors and destroy everyone and everything, fully eradicating the threat, and not much else. The other was Guilliman's side of the perspective, where he wanted to reconsolidate the Imperium and make it so that everything would be stable, trying to reclaim what little bit of their father's dream was left, despite how hopeless the situation may have seemed. Eventually, however, Guilliman would fall prey to his own hubris. That and a desire for vengeance. Sometime after the Horus Heresy, but before the scouring was completely ended, Guilliman would fight face to face with Fulgrim, and here Fulgrim would deal a mortal blow to the son of Ultramar, wounding him in the neck with a poisoned dagger. Unable to cure the wounded demigod, his sons would intern him in stasis, where he would lay dormant for 10,000 years, until the eruption of the Citra Dix Maledictum. From here, ladies and gents, he would be awoken, and he would embark on his great crusade to reach Terra. From there, he would talk to the Emperor and be given his saber and named the Regent of the Imperium. From there, the Indomitus crusade would begin in earnest, and Guilliman, with the brand new Primarch Marines, would set forward to restore the Imperium to some semblance of normalcy, which proved to be much more difficult than we thought. Guilliman began instituting many different reforms within the society, including his realm of Ultramar. Essentially, Guilliman made it very clear from the outset he wanted to restore the 500 worlds, but it turns out it was getting much harder than he thought, both internally and externally. Internally, you see that while Ultramar is indeed better than most places in the Imperium, it's still part of the Imperium, and aside from the 13 worlds governed directly by the Ultramarines themselves, many worlds that were formerly of the Ultramar or claimed Ultramarian heritage were just the same as normal Imperial worlds, with their own tyrants, princes, and own corruption to deal with. Guilliman, being the man that he is, was not having any of this and trying to restore some semblance of order, instituting the old Tetrarchy system, where he chose 4 Tetrarchs, high-ranking officers of the Ultramar, to serve in one of the Great Quadrants or the King's World. And this would continue for a while, and everything would seem to be going relatively alright until Mortarion showed up. Mortarion would launch a massive invasion of the Ultramar system, which would culminate in what would be known as the Plague Wars. The subsequent battles would be some of the most brutal seen in the 41st millennium. The Plague Wars, however, would end with something incredible occurring. Mortarion would infect Guilliman with the God Blight, a virus crafted by Nil himself to slay demigods. And it would seem to have worked. That was until the Emperor intervened. The Emperor would essentially possess Guilliman and send him forth into the gardens of Nurgle and set them ablaze, showing the might of the Emperor for all to display. So much so that it would bring Guilliman, the most logical of all his sons, even to question if the Emperor was now truly divine. As for Ultramar, it was still in a very bad position. In combination with the assault from the Tyranids and the occurrence of the Pariah Nexus and the Necrons, Ultramar had been assaulted from all sides, and the Imperium as a whole. Guilliman is a master logistician and strategist. He knows that if he wants to have any type of effect in the Imperium, he needs a strong base to campaign from, and that is his Ultramar system. So in the modern day of 40k, Guilliman has decided that Ultramar will be made strong, and he's entrusted the Ultramarines and their many successors to this task. And that brings us to the brand new Captain Titus. From the trailer, if you didn't watch it, and if you didn't, why didn't you watch it? It's super good. Titus believes that the task is impossible, and most people have come to believe that Guilliman alone has sent one single company of Ultramarines to recover multiple worlds of Ultramar, the entire 500. That is not the case. It would be very funny, but that's not true. As when we look into what lore we do have, which is not much to be frank, I imagine that when we get to the 500 Worlds book, we'll have much more, and I'll do a follow-up proper video on that, but I'm just really excited to talk about this now, so here we go. Captain Agamemnon, the veteran venerable captain of the First Company, has been sent by the Ultramarines Primarch to pacify and secure the northern borders of Ultramar. I imagine that Guilliman is essentially recreating the tactics of the Great Crusade, but in miniature. The Great Crusade would have a contingent of Space Marines as its spear tip, a strong center, but most of the forces would be the Imperial Auxilia, the Imperial Army. So in modern day 40k, it would make sense that if Guilliman would be like, okay, here's a company of Space Marines and here's several millions of guardsmen, go make it work. And I imagine that is what Guilliman is doing. Purely speculative, mind you, but it does make some sense. But then that begs the question, where is Titus going to be? And I would harbor that Captain Titus is going to be the exact opposite of Captain Agamemnon. I imagine he's going to be operating in the southern part of Ultramar. Now that is a speculative guess, but it is based off it with some minor education. If you take a look at the Ultramar map and then a map of known Necron activity, we see that in the Ultramar area, the majority of the Necron nonsense is towards the southeastern parts. So if I were to have to take a guess, I imagine that with the emergence of a brand new Necron thing, it would probably be in the southern part. And it does kind of make sense. Your two major issues, you send your first captains to the north and your second captain to the south. Speaking of Captain Titus, how did Lieutenant Titus now suddenly become captain? And this is a question that many people had. So GW gladly put out a little article in Warhammer community and basically told us exactly what happened. So from Space Marine 2, we have Brother Captain Acheron and then of course Brother Charon. But in this, Charon had been promoted to Lieutenant. The second company will be deployed to the world of Trag, a high world, seemingly loyal. Now this was seemingly the last place that would be safe from the Tyranid invasion. But then lo and behold, it turns out that that is not the case. For as Captain Acheron was looking for an arrival from a Meulen guard escort, it disappeared, with no trace of the ship whatsoever except for a single psychic scream. And it turned out that, surprising absolutely no one, there was in fact a gene stealer cult on the high world, and it had nearly taken over. Thus Captain Acheron had a decision to make, and he chose a noble sacrifice. He activated the atomic lockdown protocols to prevent against a nuclear strike, sealing every single thing in the hive from the outside world, including all his Space Marines and every gene stealer inside. And so the Space Marines gave their lives, preventing the gene stealers from spreading further onto the planet or off the planet, sacrificing their lives but ensuring that the threat was contained. When the Imperial forces got to the hive, they found the cult basically in ruins. 1 or 2 stragglers left and they would be purged. Captain Acheron's decision had saved the world, but it came at the cost of his life. And to everyone complaining, oh no, how could they kill him off screen? Like, I'm sorry, have you missed out in 40k lore? They do this all the time. Also, his death was pretty badass. He destroyed a gene stealer cult with himself. Also, for those saying it wouldn't happen, you know gene stealer cults also include gene stealers, right? And a patriarch. You know, I love being a Space Marine guy, but dude, I get it why some people hate us, because y'all motherfuckers just complain about anything, won't y'all? But basically, after such a noble and honorable sacrifice, there was only one who could be elevated to the rank of captain. And that was the former holder of the title, Demetrian Titus. Now it turns out the second company is all up for him. They make a note in the article to say that any and all dissenters he may have had were silenced, or at least silenced in public. As to what the fuck Leandros is doing, I have no idea, but God please let that motherfucker be dead. And then that brings us to the setting of the brand new era of Warhammer 40k, that being the 500 Worlds, and the reclamation of Ultramar. So basically, Demetrian Titus is captain again, and he is there together with his many allies, which collectively are known as the Wardens of Ultramar. It's unknown if this is an informal title given to them by the troops or an official title given to them by Guilliman. Given what he wants them to do, I'm leaning more towards the latter, but again, that's pure speculation. We have Gadriel who's back, and he is now an ancient. Not only that, but the company ancient, as he has the banner of the second company. He also is joined by his mentor, Veteran Sergeant Mentarus, who, I'm sorry GW, the Axeman doesn't have an axe. Why did you give him a power sword? Why did you give him a power sword, GW? I don't give a fuck what your fucking stupid little fucking box comes with. Give the man an axe. But super very importantly for us, and showing just what exactly this new series is going to be like, we have 4 human characters. And this is the most important part of it to me personally, because ladies and gentlemen, we have our first ever official Ultramar Auxilia model, that being Aemilia Minervus, a legatus in the Ultramar Defense Auxilia. Boys, finally, we have an Ultramar Auxilia mini. But not only that, a named Ultramar Auxilia character that's going to feature prominently in the story, hopefully. Unless UW does that thing where they give you something cool and then they all die in the first novel. God, that would suck. But she's not the only one, as we also have Gaius Silva, who is the Commodore. I'm assuming that's the rank he's given, or could just be Admiral or something, but he's the commander of Ultramarine defense ships, aka the Ultramarine Navy. We also have Lucia Vesta, who is a plenipotentiary. What the fuck is this word? Oh, it's a fancy word for diplomat. Why did it? Okay, never mind. But valued diplomat and expert counselor she is. We have Danielle Cornelius, a veteran astropath who has served for over 100 years in Ultramar's employ. Ladies and gentlemen, we see that this is a proper restoration of Ultramar, or an attempt, because this is not only Ultramarines at the head here. We have Ultramar Auxilia in various different aspects. And again, with this new 500 worlds, we could be seeing a much more holistic approach. Instead of it just being a veteran space marine book, a guard book, a political book, we could see this being an encompassing story about a realm being reforged. And honestly, I am very excited about it. But now we know the state of Ultramar. But we're not quite done yet with the 500 worlds, because we need to take a look at who these bastards are fighting. That being Necrosaur Amentar. This is a Destroyer Lord, but it's believed that he is the genesis of the Destroyer curse, which is a massive lore development for the Necrons. Again, we don't really have much about this guy, but apparently his story involves guilt, the shattering of the Catan, and the Psychic King may have wiped his memories. Regardless, the model looks gorgeous, but the fact of the matter is, this is the guy who Guilliman and the boys are fighting. Destroyer cadres, Destroyer cults, which means Necrons as is are pretty crazy, unreasonable, but these guys are literally driven mad by desire to eat flesh, so the fight is going to be extra brutal. But now that we've established what little facts we do know, time to start with the speculations. What does this mean for Ultramar and the 500 worlds? Well, it's quite simple. Guilliman wants to restore Ultramar, we all know that, but it appears how he wants to restore Ultramar. Guilliman is going full hog. He probably wants to restore Ultramar back to the days of the old Imperium, which is pretty much impossible. And this isn't the first time that we've seen that people are saying like, hey, Bobby G, this is not it. Titus said it himself. But time and time again, there have been many characters who've explained to Guilliman that that just isn't possible. And here we get to see a first ever example, or a real in-depth example should I say, of Guilliman having to deal with the fact that he is from a different time. He's from a time 10,000 years ago. And during this 500 Worlds series, we may reach a breaking point. Either Titus is going to be able to restore the 500 Worlds, or succeed in his area of restoring them, and Guilliman's going to be proven right, or it's going to fail miserably. The second company will be devastated, the Ultramar Auxilia will be ravaged, and Guilliman is going to have to accept that the modern day 40k is the norm. There is no returning to the Imperium of yesteryear. But to be fair, take a look at my boy. Homie is looking fucked up. He needs a W. So yeah. But something that I really do want us to see is the Codex Astartes. We know that Guilliman is in the process of revising the Codex. The question is, how is he going to revise it? The Codex Astartes was never meant to be a permanent solution. It was meant to be a stopgap, a temporary solution, something that meant to be changed. It was never meant to be permanent, and it was certainly never meant to be treated as scripture or divine writ. But that's what it's become. Guilliman is changing it. And one thing that many people are wondering of is that, how is he going to change the structure? We know for a fact that 1,000 Space Marines per chapter just doesn't cut the mustard anymore. That's why during the Cyclitix Maledictum they got rolled, because they were used to operating in small groups. But when you have hundreds of Chaos Legionaries operating in battalion or chapter size formations, you need chapter size formations to stop them. And we see that with a shift with the Primarch Marines. Before, specialist units were attached to tactical squads. Flamer here, Plasma here, but in the modern day, we have the Hellblasters and the Infernus, full 10-man squads of support weapon units. There is a slow change. Whereas one Marine with a Flamer would have been enough, now one squad is barely even sustainable. Guilliman is making the Astartes think bigger, to fight in bigger battles. And if ever we're going to get an example of what the new Codex is and how Space Marines are going to be organized, it's going to be in this book series. Would Guilliman increase the number of companies? Would he increase the size of the companies? Would he create a subdivision above the chapter, a type of strike force to join together? I mean, we really see that time and time again. Fun fact for you, Dante, right here and now, technically still has command of multiple chapters of the Blood. Many stayed in around the area to fight, and theoretically he's not just a chapter master anymore. He's the regent of the Imperial Nihilists, meaning in all technicality he's not beholden to the rules of the Codex. And the Blood Angels were never really strict adherents to it in the first place. No one knows what the Lion is doing in the Lion's Protectorate. He's just getting all the Fallen back together, and they definitely number more than 1,000 boys. And then Guilliman has the shield companies of Ultramar, Ultramarine descendants who are permanently stationed around Ultramar underneath the Ultramarines. That sounds like an awful lot to a legion to me. We're also going to get a good example of the Ultramar Auxilia, see what reclamations and changes they've gone through. We're going to see how the average Ultramarian citizen is, what Guilliman wants for them. But we're also going to get something interesting about the Necrons. Everyone is so hyped about the Ultramarines, rightfully so, but most people seem to be forgetting. We're going to get some information about the Destroyer virus, and what is potentially a hidden Necron dynasty, the first ever dynasty to be infected by the Destroyer virus. That is massive for the Necrons. And the implications that Zarek might have hidden this from his people, placed the originator under slumber, hoping that maybe the virus would sleep with him only for it to be infected by others and spread unknown? Whilst it may be called the 500 worlds, this is pretty big for the Necrons. But what I really want to get into this video is the fact that this is a breaking point with the Imperium. The Imperium is facing crisis after crisis after crisis, and Guilliman is looking very worse for wear. Yet now, despite all of this, Guilliman believes that the force he has here now is enough to recover some parts of Ultramar to secure the southern borders. This is the breaking point. If Titus fails here, Guilliman will have to accept that restoration of the Imperium might not be possible. Now some of you may be thinking that's a hell of a thing to put on just one captain, Brad, but think about it. This is Guilliman trying to get a victory. This is Guilliman trying to restore something to set up, if he has Ultramar as a stable, safe realm that the rest of the Imperium can rally against, he can further make reconquest and stabilization into the rest of the galaxy. But if he is faced with an enemy like the first ever Destroyer cult, if he cannot destroy this, if he cannot overcome this hurdle, if he cannot secure Ultramar, then what does that mean for the rest of the Imperium? Because Necrons are not uncommon, nor the various different evils in this galaxy. This is a challenge, not only to his authority as regent of the Imperium, as the leader of humanity, but as Restorator et Imperium, the one who would restore the Empire. If Guilliman fails here, if Titus fails here, the Ultramarines might fail completely. Ultramar will never be more than what its borders is now. Guilliman will not be able to marshal his forces, and thus, he will not be able to help the rest of the Imperium as much as he would have. This is a key deciding point in the Imperium's history. And the reason why I say this is because we take a look at the enemies. This is not just a nameless Tyranid Hive Fleet or a nameless Chaos Warband. This is the first ever Destroyer. This is the originator of arguably the worst curse placed on the Necrons aside from biotransference. This is who Guilliman is fighting. This is who Titus is fighting. It is the pinnacle and the epitome of the antagonism and the hatred against humanity made manifest. Titus is the manifestation of what an Ultramarine should be. Honorable, noble, logical, uncorruptible, but not an idiot, not tied down by dogma, and one who would never give up. That is Captain Demetrian Titus. It is a clash of titans, not only in the physical sense, but in the narrative as well. One of the greatest of the Ultramarines versus one of the most hated and reviled of the Necrons. The greatest of humanity versus the greatest of the alien. That is the fight that is here. That is the fight that will decide the future of the 500 worlds, the jewel of the Imperium. That is what Titus and Guilliman are fighting for. And if they lose this fight, then they might very well lose the fight for the Imperium. But it is not just of a narrative issue that Titus faces. For if Titus loses against this Necron, the rest of the Imperium might be completely destroyed. For in the madness of Atarantar, he decides that he wants to recollect all the shards of the Nightbringer and unleash a full and whole Catan on the worlds of the Imperium. The Nightbringer is the greatest of all the Catan, the most evil, the most hateful, and the most powerful. To unleash the full shard of it on the galaxy is to invite annihilation and destruction, and that is what the Necrosaur wants. He wants to destroy all living beings. He wants to end and eradicate all life. And if he gets past Titus, the whole of Ultramar, the whole of the Imperium, is ripe for destruction. So in truth, it is not just a matter of the spiritual or moral nature, but rather every single aspect incarnate. If the Necrons win here, there is none telling what can happen to the rest of the Imperium. But if Titus is able to stop it, well then the Imperium might just have another day to live. Yet, even if Titus is victorious, even if the 500 worlds are restored, who's to say that humanity will not repeat its own mistakes? Who's to say that victory will be a victory at all, but rather just prolonging the inevitable? My lords, my generals, my countrymen, said the Primarch. Fellow Imperial citizens, fellow warriors of many worlds, I bid you welcome to this conclave today, at the heart of Ultramar. I have summoned you here today to discuss the cleansing of Ultramar, my brother's forces, the Primarch said. The Indominus Crusade is done. As of now, a portion of the fleets that constituted it have returned here for a time. I have come to your aid. When I depart, this realm will be better defended, better organized, and more resilient than it has been for many generations. In the days of the Great Crusade, the worlds and realms associated with each legion provided a solid base of operations, and a link to the greater whole of the Imperium. Most were paragons to be aspired to by other worlds, models of good governance, and a promise of peace that would come to compliant worlds. Ultramar was the very best. It was rightfully lauded the length and breadth of the galaxy for its fairness, a just place where every citizen could live free of harm. Guilliman got up from his chair and unrolled a star map upon the table. He smoothed it gently with his armored hands and stared at it a moment. I have read many histories. I recognize and I am grateful that Ultramar has continued in the role I intended since my time of my death. I recognize and am grateful that Ultramar has continued in the role I intended since the time of my death. I am proud with all that you have done to maintain the traditions of justice this realm represents in an often cruel galaxy. I am thankful for the preservation of freedoms enjoyed by its people, circumscribed by the grim state of affairs we find ourselves in as these admirable characteristics may be. Ultramar still remains an example to every other system in the Imperium. He took a deep breath and rested his fist upon the chart. Cargo looked up past the armored hands. The legend of the map read Ultramar, but it was not the realm he recognized. It looked to include all the original systems of the 500 worlds, and more besides. The territory was divided into 5 distinct colored blocks. However, said the Primarch, and a touch of steel entered his voice, I should have done better. By reducing Ultramar to a size that could be protected effectively by one chapter, while the Ultramarines fulfilled their many obligations elsewhere, I reduced Ultramar's effectiveness as an example and as a bastion. He looked up, a sincere look on his face. I was mistaken. Silence greeted those words. To most people in the room, he was effectively a god, and gods did not make mistakes. Furthermore, my command a century ago that all treatises of independence were to be immediately rescinded, and the ancient 500 worlds reincorporated into this realm, has not fully been reenacted. The efforts to reconstitute Greater Ultramar, that is, the ancient 500 worlds, have not proceeded as well as I would have liked. I am angry with those Imperial commanders who will not submit to Ultramar's rule. I am disappointed with those commanders that pay lip service to my command and continue to put their own interests above the greater humanity. Ultramar appears to be coming back into its original form, but it is a sham. Several representatives of certain worlds looked very uncomfortable. Guilliman pointed an armored finger at the star chart. This is my vision of Greater Ultramar. It will be put into effect immediately, as I cannot rely on the goodwill of local government to do my bidding. I am of today reinstating the ancient officers of the Tetrarchy, 4 noble members of the Adeptus Astartes, whom I have chosen as much for their acumen as statesmen, as for their abilities as warriors, will be installed as sector commanders to oversee the reorganization of this realm along the lines that I, and I alone, shall decree. They will be provided with the authority to pursue my aims as they see fit, whether diplomatically or militarily. He let the threat hang on in the air. They will furthermore be entrusted with the defense of these sectors, and when peace comes, with their rebuilding and further development. Under my rule, the Tetros govern from the worlds of Ajax, Okalodon, Samarath, and Konor. Samarath was devastated some time ago, I understand, while Ajax has diminished in relative importance to the systems around it, and is currently occupied by the enemy. The seats of the Tetros were established early in Ultramar's expansion, and Ajax and Konor were both approximate to the capital world. In recognition of these changes in circumstance, I will establish a new tetrarchy upon the following worlds. Konor will accept a tetrarch as its lord again. Despite its nearness to Macragge, the situation at Espandor demonstrates that a dedicated defensive strategy must be formulated to guard the northern reaches against further incursions from the Scourge stars, and eventually to push out and cleanse those systems of the Plague God's followers. To this role, I appoint Severus Agamemnon, first captain of the Ultramarines and regent of Ultramar. Agamemnon stood and knelt. "My lord," he said, "you do me a great honor. You will retain your rank and position within the chapter, Tetrarch, though your new duties will be onerous," said the Primarch. "Rise, Tetrarch of Konor, and take your place among the highest of lords." Agamemnon returned to his seat, his bearing radiating new determination. The other worlds that will bear this responsibility are as follows. Undermung shall be the base of the second Tetrarch, with responsibility over the southern reach. To this role, I appoint Second Captain Porton of the Genesis chapter. Porton stood, his red armor dark in the hall. He held his hands up in confusion. My lord, what have I done to deserve this honor? Do you not wish to appoint your own Ultramarines to these positions? I am overwhelmed. I have studied chapter recordings of 7 Space Marines among all my sons, said Guilliman. I have selected my Tetrarchs according to their ability, no matter their origin. I call upon those who are suitable for the role, without any favor to my own chapter over others. You have been chosen as worthy in my estimation. Your efforts in rebuilding the Diamat cluster 4 centuries ago suggest you have all the qualities that the position requires. My lord, thank you, said Porton. You will also retain your title as captain, though I recommend Chapter Master Erland promote another captain to your company. Protos in the west will take the 3rd Tetrarch. To this role, I have assigned Captain Balthus of the Doom Eagles. I have confirmation he has been released by his chapter and is making his way to Macragge. That leaves the Eastern Marches. This area, under the Sothorian League, remained politically unified until recently, but since the fall of Sothal itself to the Tyranids, the League has been without proper guidance. This will change. Vespartor, 3 light years away from Sothar, is designated as the new seat of authority there, and its Tetrarch will rule over the Sothorian League and the Eastern Shield Worlds besides. Guilliman looked behind him at his equerry. Captain Felix, Primaris Ultramarine, will take command. My lord, I am not qualified, blurted the equerry. You are qualified because I say you are qualified, said Guilliman. I have been testing you ever since your records were brought to my attention. Why do you think I inducted you fully into the Ultramarines from my unnumbered sons? I saw your potential a long time ago, Felix. I have been training you for this role. I need a Primaris Tetrarch. All Space Marines in the eastern quadrant of Ultramar will be of the Primaris type, and many others throughout Ultramar also. I cannot afford any dissension between the 2 generations. You may protest that this will never happen. Archmago's call can assure me that you are made loyal. You are of the older type. Many cite your records of sacrifice and devotion, but I know the souls of men. I have heard protestations of loyalty before, and witnessed unintended slights burn them to ash. Where there is difference, there is space for envy, and envy leads to conflict. I will have none of it. 3 of the 4 Tetrox will be Space Marines of the existing type. You will accept this offer, Felix. The books must be balanced. 86 worlds will be yours. It shall fall to you as Tetrarch of Vespator, to govern them all for the good of their peoples, and to be a spokesperson for the Primaris upon the Council of Greater Ultramar. All of you Tetrarchs will have similar burdens. My lord! Felix fell to his knees, armor banging loudly on the stone. Lord Manius Kelga will continue to rule the Central Worlds, with the exception of those in the systems of Konor, Viridia, and Espandor. In this way, Ultramar will be divided into 5 parts. At that moment, the emissary from Okulada spoke up. My lord, what do you mean that many of the warriors will be Primaris Marines? He asked. A glance from the Primarch had him hurriedly sitting down. My concerns that a single chapter could not protect the 500 worlds remains valid, said Guilliman. I have therefore decided to station 8 new chapters of Space Marines within the bounds of Greater Ultramar, along with the Ultramarines and the size of the Emperor. Those territories fall into the 4th Tetra. There will be henceforth 10 full chapters to defend this realm. This provoked a noisy reaction. Guilliman ignored it. Work will be immediately undertaken to rebuild the size of the Emperor. They will have responsibility for protection for what is currently the Sothorian League. Here, at Kelkamus, we shall base the Avenging Sons, and at Housebridge, the Praetors of Ultramar shall have their home. The murmuring broke out into audible protests. You would have your own legion? Said a female diplomat. My lord, what is your intention? You say I have a legion, said Guilliman, his tone dangerously low, when I myself expressly forbade their formation or use. The woman had the choice to either sit down or press forward. Bravely, she chose the latter. Your 9 divisions of the Unnumbered Sons were said to be a legion. They were not, said Guilliman. We are dealing with semantics. The Unnumbered Sons were organized into chapters, as they are the new defense of Ultramar. He swept his steely gaze across the crowd again. Listen to me. My intention is to save your lives and the Imperium. Put aside your selfish concerns. Negate the disappointment I have felt in common humanity since awakening. Show me that my hopes for our species were not unfounded. Impress me with your wisdom. What about the other Imperial governors? Said another diplomat. What will happen to those worlds who take Tetrarchs? Some of them are loyal, added another. They willingly rejoin the 500 worlds, and now you remove them and replace them with Adeptus Astartes? Chatter from among the human contingent in the room swelled in volume. The Space Marines remained silent. My lord, said Hirodan, the son of the Hierarch of Kelkamus, the galaxy has changed since your time. The worlds of the Space Marine chapters are often of low worth to the Adeptus Terra. Their tithe grades are set to null, death worlds and the like. They are recruiting grounds only. Kelkamus is a well-developed planet. Housebridge, though lesser in importance and population, is no backwater either. Guilliman was not swayed. I am changing things, he said, and his eyes became cold and hard as commentary ice. The chapters stationed throughout Ultramar will be tasked primarily with the realm's defense. Kelkamus and Housebridge will be governed by their chapter masters, as will all worlds where chapters will be stationed. Do not mistake me. There will be a need for civilian governors, just as there is here in McCraig. The existing governors will be given the opportunity to retire after a period of 10 years. During the handover period, they will be commanded to work with their successors to handle the transition. Once completed, their heirs shall be offered to serve Ultramar as the administrators of those worlds. they will still rule. They will not be commanders. We have served the Imperium faithfully for 3,000 years. Is this to be our reward? My father's title was bestowed by the Emperor himself. The title, said Guilliman, was bestowed by the High Lords of Terror, who was speaking on behalf of the Emperor. I am not speaking on behalf of the Emperor. I am speaking with his full and absolute authority. Unlike the High Lords, I have recently conversed with him. This is an offer I advise you not to refuse, Hero Dan. Many of the representatives began shouting, their questions flying at the Primarch, their own power threatened. They seemed to lose a little of the fear for them. They seemed to lose a little of their fear of him. They seemed to lose a little of their fear of him. Power is corrosive, thought Calgar. It erodes respect. It erodes common sense. My people! The Primarch said. He stood upright. My captains, my sons, my loyal citizens. Do you not understand? These changes will benefit us all, and in time will aid the Imperium. I intend to make Ultramar a model of what the Imperium can be. Look beyond your own borders. You'll see our empire is crumbling. I will shore up the walls and make it great again. With the 500 worlds secure, we shall become a beacon of reason and hope. From here, the reconquest of the galaxy can begin. But will it begin, or will the State of Ultramar be the end of humanity? But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much for watching. Let me know what you thought down below. What do you think for Ultramar? What do you hope? And what do you think we'll get in the brand new bookie book? Love to hear your thoughts down below. But I want to say a massive thank you to watching, even more massive thank you to my awesome members and Patreons. We then have our Lieutenant tier with Mr. Eddie V3, Miss Majora of the Void, Mr. Curtis Studies, and Miss Tori. Massive shout out to my Sergeant tier members, Mr. Damiak, Mr. Warsmith the Fireheart, Mr. Andy McGee, Mr. Bowen, Mr. Sean RL7, and Mr. Matthew Merrill, Mr. That Guy. Massive shout out to my Corporal tier members, Mr. Tremaine the Math Kitty, Mr. Lord Rosarius, Mr. Tech Priest Toaster, Mr. Bowen, Miss Shauna Smithers, the Gentle Salamander, the Wench of Warhammer, Major Doshinet, and Mr. Edward King. And finally, but absolutely not least, shout out to my amazing privateer members, Mr. Thomas Moslons, Mr. Ivan _SVW, Mr. Monkey Man, Mr. Michael Ayeda, Mr. Diego Castro, Mr. Fortisunum, Mr. CMD Nay, Mr. Eric Massaro, Mr. Dom Marek, Mr. Ken _Sakura 333, Mr. Morally Bankrupt, and Mr. Matthew Peter. Thank you. I love you and appreciate you. Sign up to Table memberships, get a bunch of awesome benefits, behind the scenes stuff, early access to these videos, member only exclusive content, as well as an exclusive role and channel on the Discord. But remember, this will always be free, so whether give your boy $1 or not, I will love you just the same. Mwah! But ladies and gentlemen, I've been the General Bradley 101. You've been beautiful, awesome, and amazing people. Thank you all so very much for watching. You almost sure say hello out there, boys and girls. And I will catch y'all next time. Dismiss, Rangers. And to all those upset that Ultramar is getting shit, look, if it's good lore, if the minis are good, why are you complaining? Like, you have a right to be upset that your shit isn't getting something, but the people that hate, come on. Also, if I hear one comment about people like, oh, Ultramar was built on the backs of slaves, yeah, so is today. That shit made you think, don't it? It's an IP, let people enjoy it.